I was actually on last week as well. I think it was Jen and Dawn.
Okay.
And and they helped me reinforce an idea in my mind. And my argument was based on asexual reproduction. Jesus Christ might be female, right? Because the Mother Mary reproduced asexually. And so I think we have all of it wrong. Perhaps Jesus Christ actually was female, or Mother Mary had a beard, because offsprings of asexually reproduced progeny, the progeny of asexual reproduction is always an exact female clone of it.
Like a clone, right? Yeah. But I mean, they're saying that somehow there's like the divine aspect to it. That how do we measure that? Because nobody knows what that even means, right?
Yeah, God put the male DNA into.
Or did whatever. I mean, what does a God do when it reproduces?
Yeah.
I have no idea, and neither does anyone else.
Actually, Jen spoke about an interesting idea. She said, okay, there are some stories out there which talk about God having inseminated Mother Mary through the year, right? Through her year, where she
okay. I hadn't heard that one. Okay.
So we have very interesting ways of getting about these things. Anyways, but what I'm here to talk about today is, but before that, the first two calls, I thought you guys were running a psychiatric clinic.
Yeah.
You should send them an invoice.
It makes me a little uncomfortable, to be honest, when we get calls like that, because
we're not really qualified.
I don't want to say or do the wrong thing with somebody that doesn't.
Yeah, I understand. No, it's great, but it's very good of you guys to be able to politely host on this call. What I was going to talk about is something called the simulation hypothesis. I'm sure you've heard of it. Yeah, so which essentially, I'm sure you have, and just in one quick line without getting into a ramble on that, is the idea that all of reality, including the Earth and all of the universe, is in fact an artificial simulation.
Right.
And it's likely that because we as human beings, we know that we are developing technologically, and it's not unforeseeable that in the future we will have simulations that the characters within which will evolve, we can evolve, we will create the conditions for it, and then the characters within that simulation find that everything feel pain, emotion, all that, and they think that that is their world. Similarly, we are in a simulation, and then we by the same stretch of imagination, take it a little bit further.
Right, so simulation's all the way down, right?
All the way down, exactly.
Okay.
All the way down.
All right.
But all the way into the past, yeah. I mean, we are probably created by a character in a previous simulation.
Okay.
But that said, and it's also testable, by the way. I was just going through a paper, the Cornell University Library, by Tom Campbell, O'Hady, Sagwa, and Watkinson. They've written a paper and submitted it last February, I think, of being able to physically test.
I have a question about that.
This particular.
I have a question, right? So you're not. Wait a minute. You're not the first person to call and bring this up. The last time this happened, I kind of cut off the call, and people got really angry, which is why I'm like, I want to talk to Nate, because people got mad when I didn't talk to the other guy. So we'll talk. What I basically said to the other dude was, yeah, I would accept that if we found out that we were living, or if I found out I was living in a simulation, because that might mean there are no other people, right? It could just be me. So if I'm living in a simulation, and I consider God to be the thing that created my universe, then I would be totally fine saying, oh, this is that thing they were referring to when they said God, okay, fine. I get that, and I'm actually wouldn't have an objection to saying that would be the God for the simulation or whatever. But I have a question that came up when I started thinking about this later. If you were, let's say you were on a jury, right? Like you're in a jury, and you have heard the whole case against the defendant. And right before you're ready to read your verdict, someone comes to you and says, all of the evidence that we have presented to you, all the testimony, all of the forensics, everything was fabricated. Would you be able to hand down what you would consider to be a valid verdict in that case based on the evidence you'd been presented?
No, that'll have me think twice, because this person coming to me and saying all that evidence was bunk.
Right.
Now I need to again evaluate whether what he's saying or she's saying is true or not.
Right.
So now here's the question. Well, here's the question. If we are in fact living in a simulation, wouldn't that mean that all of our evidence is also simulated?
Yeah, everything is.
So how would we be able to trust that anything is trustworthy?
You can't, but that's not the point I was trying to make.
So then what evidence could there be for a simulation?
Yes. I'm sorry, say that again, Tracie.
What evidence could there be for a simulation if we are aware that all of the evidence is fabricated?
Yeah, that's a great question. I have that question as well, and I am not a physicist, and I wouldn't be able to, even big.
But I mean, anything we're looking at, anything we're studying, we cannot trust is factually, it's just like, it's like trying to study a dream.
That's right. I mean, it's like the frog in the well. I mean, how would the frog ever know that there's anything outside the well, and anybody ever made that well? For it, the well is its work.
But what if you said the well isn't even real, right? There's not even a well.
Yeah, I mean, that's not me.
Whatever you're looking, whatever's being looked at to say, hey, this is the evidence that we're in a simulation. It's like, well, but how do you trust that if you're saying it's fabricated? I don't understand. But anyway, now we'll get 10,000 letters telling me how we know we're in a simulation. So, but anyway, go on. I wanted to just ask that because I thought, oh, maybe this guy has the answer. But go. What's the rest of your point?
No, I don't. I don't have answers. All I have is questions.
Okay.
If I did have answers, then I wouldn't be calling your show. I would be putting out a paper. Okay. So I know that there are certain physicists who actually have put out certain scientific papers, which I admit I'm not in capacity to evaluate or anything like that. But I'll just take their word for it for now that they have proposed some ideas allowing us to test that hypothesis, right? But then what I'm trying to get at is, let us assume for a second that somehow they're able to test it, and then it is rendered plausible that we indeed are in a simulation, which means classically then we will have a creator, right, in the sense of that word. So if that is true, then the question to you is, if that turns out to be true, let me frame this correctly, would you then define that creator in the framework of God as in the way that you would define it?
Well, that's kind of what I was saying before.
Well,
like, I think it would. There are times when, so for example, let's look at it this way. There are times. Well, I mean, we could kind of use the whole debate about the historicity of Jesus, right? So there's this whole question of like, if we found out that there was a reformist Jew that was the foundation for the stories about the mythological Jesus, would I be willing to say like, okay, that's the Jesus, right? And I guess it's kind of like that. It's sort of like, it doesn't have all the aspects of the myth, but it has sufficient aspects that it's like, okay, I think this is what spawned the myth. And it's kind of the question of, would you say that was Jesus? Would you say it wasn't Jesus? Would you say that it's like a close approximation of the thing that this is where the Jesus came from? And I would probably be fine saying like, okay, this is the God, right? This is that thing that people are referring to when they refer to God. I would probably at that point accept it, but I wouldn't accept, necessarily the whole mythological construct of it. Right. But I would say this is the thing that spawned the thing, that is God. And if somebody were to say like, that's the God, I wouldn't be like, don't call it that, right? I mean, I think it just would come down to a matter of how a person's perspective would allow them to work within that. Some people would probably be like, no, that's not, it just proves there's not really a God. And somebody else would be like, that's the thing that spawned the God. And somebody else would be like, oh, there's the God, And I think either way, I would probably be like, okay, you can look at it in many ways, and I probably wouldn't have a problem with any of them. I mean,
and yeah, and I think I like that answer.
You still have to make the leap from plausible to it really exists.
Probable.
You can say, well, we can do some testing, and this kind of may be true. But so then you get, well, this thing that I want to call God may be true, and that doesn't really help you.
But I think what Nate is saying is, well, hey, what if we found out we were in a simulation and we found the little trademark register, like, one day at the corner of the universe, and and it was like, okay,
would you be okay to call that God?
Yeah,
sure, I guess if you got to call it something.
I would be all right with it. I would be like, hey, that's closer to demonstrating a God than anyone's ever come.
Right.
We'll give it that.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. I mean, although that in itself would be, in some sense, a simulation created by another simulation before it, and
yeah, then you get that whole infinite regress weirdness, right? And it's
where did the God come from?
Story, yeah.
But here we are, so who knows?
Yeah, here we are. Exactly.
Okay, so all the fans who wanted me to talk about the simulation, okay, done and done. We talked to Nate. We had a good conversation. We went down the road. I hope you're happy.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, yeah, no, it's just
not you. I'm sorry, Nate. No, I'm talking to the fans who were very, very like, why didn't you talk to that man about
all the emails
simulation
and blog posts that we got?
We did. We took it. Okay. All right, and I'm glad.
I'm the pathway to his salvation. Okay. So and I like your response really much, because I am thinking that if there is evidence for I myself am not a believer, of course, because there isn't any evidence.
So you're not a syntheist.
What's a syntheist?
I think we just invented them.
Syntheist. No, I'm not a syntheist. Okay. I just follow the evidence. It's as simple as me for that.
And if it leads to syntheism, so be it. Yeah, no, that's cool. Well, it was very much fun talking to you, Nate. I appreciate your call very much. We have a few other people, so we do have to move on, but it was very much, I enjoyed that. It was delightful.
Yeah, thanks, Nate.
Thank you, Nate.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Have a good evening, you guys.
You too. Bye-bye.
I just had a thought. If the God simulator had to have 2 simulator parents and then 4 simulator grandparents,
goes back to a guppy, right? It's a guppy. So